Happy New Year all. I hope you enjoyed this challenge to see if your star sign has indeed changed based on the 2020 revisions to those star signs. So let's take a look at our old star signs initially. So it's a data structure which you can imagine is readable as a table, I guess, in Excel, for example, but isn't so good when we're working with it in Tableau Prep. So what we're going to want to do is rearrange it so that we have all the star signs in one field and then all these date ranges in another field. So first of all, we're going to get rid of this null row just by clicking on it and hitting exclude. That's what we do in this step here. And then we're going to do that pivoting. So to get the pivot that we want, we need to use multiple pivots. So first of all, we drag in sort of the odd numbers of the field. So that's all of the star signs, and then we use this plus button here to drag in all the even numbers of fields, if you like. So that's all the dates. Now I had a little bit of trouble with this when I was doing it, and I think it's just because they're all starting with an F. So I think I had to use this don't automatically rename, even though that's not ticked now. I believe when I was actually building it, I did have to have that ticked. But yeah, it's just something to play around with if you're having trouble with it. Maybe renaming the fields before you come into it might help. But eventually, hopefully Tableau Prep gives you this structure which you'd be happy with. So then it's just a case of renaming some of the fields and then doing some splitting up. So I use the automatic split on this dates field so that we get sort of the day and the month in different fields so that we can create a date with each of them. So these first four changes here, they're just dealing with the automatic split that we did, and then I create a start date and an end date. So the start date, very simple. I'll just zoom in on that so you can see it. That's a bit blurry, that's a bit better, isn't it? Then you get, we're just making it for 2020, and we're using those first two, month and day. And then if I just zoom out from that and show you the end date, which we need to treat a little bit differently, because we need to know if it's January, we want it to actually be 2021 instead of 2020. Because if the end date is in January, that means that it's gone from December of the previous year into 2021. So that caught me out a little bit initially. I didn't really think of that case, but that is just to make sure that your end date is after your start date. And yeah, otherwise we're just doing kind of exactly the same thing as the start date. So that's all nice and easy there. And then we go on to the scaffolding section, which, yeah, I'll talk through it for this one. I'll zoom in on our join clauses that we're using. So we're saying that our start date needs to be less than or equal to the date. So in other words, the date that we are scaffolding on needs to be greater than or equal to the start date of the date range for that star sign. And it also needs to be, it doesn't want to go past the end date of that date range. So that's how it's scaffolding that out for each of those dates, getting a row per date. Or in some cases we have multiple rows per date just because it's on the cusp. So we just need to be aware that that's why that might be happening. So that's nice and simple too. Let's talk about how we clean up the new star signs dataset. So here, when we read it in, I will just go back and mention actually that when you're inputting your old star signs, make sure that you're generating the field names automatically rather than having the first line containing headers. So just make sure it's that second option that's selected, otherwise you'll be having troubles with your dataset not looking right. And again, the same thing in the new star signs dataset too. So for me, that all got separated out on the spaces, so that's nice and easy to work with. It's almost like we've done our automatic split already. We want to just remove the punctuation from our star signs because they all had a colon after them, and just do a little bit of renaming. And then we're creating our start date and end date in much a similar way as before. The kind of things to point out here would be that when you're making your date for 2020, then our months are actually, if you look down here, they're sort of 3-letter names of the month rather than being the full month name or something like that. So we actually need to use, for this calculation, let's read inside outwards. So because, for example, September, we can see it's sept with the T, we want to first of all make sure that we're only taking the first 3 letters of that field. And then we're using date pass with 3 capital M's to make sure that Tableau can understand that those 3 letters are the month named, or the abbreviated month name, if you like. And then we want to return from that the month. So that's quite a complicated way of going about that. If you know of a simpler way, I'd be really happy for you to tell me. But that's how you get the month out. And then the day, obviously, is nice and easy. It is just not a number. So that's for the start date, and then the end date is much the same as in the previous one. So just when we're having January, we need to make sure that we have the 2021. Otherwise, just having it as 2020 and using the relevant fields. And I also wanted to create a date range for the new star signs. And that is just basically saying that we want to have the month first, and then, oh, sorry, we're not having the month first at all, I'm lying to you. We're having the day and then the month, and then a dash, and then a day, and then the month to create that date range. So we're just making sure that's a string for the dates for those days, because they are numbers, and it won't like it if we take away the string, because that would be trying to concatenate a number with a text, which it just doesn't like, because that doesn't make any sense. So there we go. We just leave that as a string, and that all works nicely and creates our date range. And then we do some removing of the fields before we also scaffold our data set here as well in much the same way. So now we have our 2 inputs that we are going to join together on the date field so that we can check if our star signs have changed or not. So we join it on the date. We come into our final clean step. We get rid of one of the date fields there. And we want to look for each row that we have. Is the old star sign equal to the new star sign? So we're doing that just by saying, if I zoom in on that again, that if the old star sign is equal to the new star sign, give us a 1, otherwise give us a 0. And we're going to use an LOD to check for those rows where we have it on the cusp, for example, this one here, where the old star sign was Aquarius, but the new star sign is on the cusp. It could be Aquarius, it could be Capricorn, because Aquarius starts on the 16th of February, Capricorn finishes on the 16th of February. So we want to say, in this example, I've picked quite a good one here, and we want to know, is the old star sign, is there a chance it could stay the same? And in this case, our maximum value of the same field is a 1, and therefore, yes, in some cases this star sign does stay the same, so we don't want to include it in our output of star signs that have changed. So we're going to just create a fixed LOD here. We're going to group it on the date, and we're going to take the maximum of that same field that we just calculated. And that means that if at any point we have the same star sign in that date, that will be a 1. So you can see that by the fact that there's 78 rows here that are a 1, whereas before there was only 59. So we've just kind of encapsulated more of those rows into that additional 1. But then we're just going to exclude all these rows here in this filter. And this now is going to be our output data set once we do a little bit of cleaning up and removing fields and creating that birthday field, in which case we are using the month first and then the day. So we're just saying the left 3 letters of the month for that date. And we're using date named so that it would output as January, for example, but then the left 3 values would then be Jan. So we just wanted to say Jan 1 or Jan 2, etc. You know how dates work. And that is all that we wanted to do for our challenge. Removing that date, we have our birthday, we have our old star sign, we have our new star sign, and we have the date range of that new star sign. So my birthday is the 20th of April, which actually is a terrible example because it is one of them that does not appear in this list. I continue to be an Aries. However, if we pick Tom's birthday, fun fact, Tom's birthday is Christmas Day. Sorry, they're in December order. So let's go find that. December 25th, and he was before a Capricorn, now he's a Sagittarius. So I hope that was an interesting, fun little challenge to end the year on, and thanks very much for watching.